Hi, this is Elizabeth Veely from the Powerful Women Off the Record podcast. And recently I had the pleasure of speaking with Tanya Carney. Tanya is the store director of the Wheatsville Co-op in Austin, Texas. And I've had the pleasure of seeing Tanya in action, and I was really looking forward to this conversation. And in typical fashion, she gave me a lot to think about. So, Tanya talked about the time when she outgrew her life, I guess is the best way to word it. And things were comfortable and she was happy and she loved her coworkers. But she was definitely getting that itch to do a little bit more and to take on the next challenge. And we've all been there, right? I love that her husband referenced it like being a lobster and you've just outgrown your shell. And the two of them made some big moves. I mean, she left a very successful position and moved across the country for a fresh start. And that takes a lot of courage and work, right? I mean, just getting your life set up in a town that you don't know a lot of people, you don't have your friends or family there. And so kudos to them for making that move. And it just kind of shows the courage it takes to keep growing, right? And to keep stretching and knowing when comfort might equal stagnation, and that's not, really your style. So, I think it's fantastic that they were able to do that. And, I've always known this about Tanya, but she has this love of learning and she has this curiosity, which I'm sure helped when she was making that decision to make that move. And she was the one that talked to me years ago about her love of podcasts and how much they helped her and, filled that void in her life where you're just looking for some content that speaks to you and motivates you. And maybe you pick up, a few tips and tricks, or at least know that, you're not the only one out there. So I would say Tanya is definitely a first adopter of this form of media. And that stuck with me a lot because that was always reflected in the way she handled her role and her leadership style and the changes and the growth that were going on in the organization that, where I saw her lead. And, it pulled through. And I was always fascinated how she was always just ready for the next challenge, and one of the songs, Bombs Away, Geronimo, is, one of the songs that she was explaining is a motivating song for her. And it doesn't surprise me because, I would see her be given a big challenge, something she had never done before, something that most people would be like, oh, I don't know. I don't really know anything about that. And she would always pause and be very thoughtful. And you could almost see her running it through a filter. And then, she was like, okay. And then she would just dig in and learn. And she found her ways. And so, she's such an advocate of lifelong learning. And I agree with her on that in so many ways. So on a personal level, absolutely. I feel like staying committed to lifelong learning can really keep you out of a lot of drama, right? And it can protect you from the whirlwind of life and all the changes going on in current events. If you maintain that love of learning, you're probably spending your time on different forms of media and different things than getting caught up in all that. So there's a power in staying interested in learning and finding the methods that work for you. And I'm also a huge advocate for it within an organization. I believe that if an organization can really set the culture that they are going to be supporting the employees, their personal development, hopefully related to the organization, the industry, it reduces a lot of drama, and it also builds a lot of loyalty because, those staff, that team, they can feel that you're developing them and you're helping them grow, and it always helps the organization, right? So big advocate of organizations. And if you can't support your staff's educational growth, I guess, financially, then you at least find a way to make it work in their schedule. And I've never seen it backfire, honestly. It's one of the number one things I recommend when I'm walking into a turnaround situation is I look at that, and I look to see who are the up and coming staff and where are their gaps in knowledge or confidence, whichever it is, and then find some sort of a learning modality that works for them, their schedule, their family, and keep the lifelong learning. It flips a switch, right? It just flips a switch of, I don't know, just staying above the fray, I guess. So I think Tanya's a really great example of that. And I think she shares that with her team, and she just models it, right? And so you just know what she's doing, and she kind of raises the bar with all of that. I loved how she just threw out, do not be an emotional conduit for the people around you. Such a powerful way of saying that, especially as a leader, and especially as an intuitive leader, right? And I think as women, what's one of our superpowers is to be able to read the room and to pick up on the emotions and the reactions going on in the room. And then we have to learn, though, how to not bring that in, right? And keep our emotions separate from the other people's emotions and the room's emotions. And that's a whole nother level of emotional boundaries, right? Because sometimes we want to fix it, and sometimes we want to run right into a solution. And like Tanya said, sometimes it's just saying, do you want me just to listen to this? Are we trying to find a solution? So, and I love the saying, do you need to vent, or are we going to look for a solution together? Just let me know which one we're doing here. And that actually sounded way worse than I normally say it. I actually say it in a very nice way because I mean it. So anyways, that's funny because it sounded terrible when I said it that way. I'll have to be careful how I say that going forward. But leveraging our superpower of being able to read the room without bringing it in and keeping those emotional boundaries are so critical as you move up the ranks in an organization, and finding your tricks in how to do that is so important. And I think Tanya's done a great job at that. And I've watched her work through it. I've watched her identify that she wanted to work on that and to hone her skills even more. And then I watched her develop into that. So I think as leaders, we should constantly be working on that, right? I mean, we're only human. There's going to be times that emotional boundary gets breached, but I think the more we can stay grounded and centered and slow down, the more we can kind of prevent that from happening. So I think that was really good advice from Tanya, and another thing I think she models really well. So Tanya comes from the food industry, and just there's a lot of wisdom in the food industry that I think we all need to start paying way more attention to. So Tanya's career has been mostly, maybe completely, in cooperative grocery stores. And the cooperative model is a fantastic model if you want to, take some time and look into that and support any co-ops that you might have in your area. They're always very focused on supporting local businesses and trying to get organic food when possible. And it's a very thoughtful way of, I guess, filling your shelves, but also the business model and the ownership model is you buy into it, right? You're actually becoming an owner of that co-op. So it's a very powerful initiative, and I highly encourage everyone to support it. And while I was working in that area, there was some work that I did there. I'm embarrassed to say I learned so much about food that I should have known for someone my age. At that point, I was just phoning it in. I thought I was eating well. I thought I was paying attention, and I was doing pretty darn good, I think, for normal standards. But when you really start understanding the power of, eating locally and then eating in season, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this. I know we talk a lot about leadership, but I think we need to leverage our food a lot better for our health, for our strength, for our focus, so we can show up every day and lead the organizations towards our mission. And so I don't think this is an extra. I think this is really important to talk about. And, we all know our food today is a lot less nutrient dense than it used to be. Maybe you don't know that, but it is. So a carrot today has probably, and someone else will know this way better than me, but let's say it has half the amount of nutrients it had, let's say 20, 30 years ago. So the vegetables and fruits that our parents ate were, they had to eat half as much, right? Because every carrot was twice as powerful. And that comes back to our soil. Highly, highly, highly encourage you look more into this, because I think until all of us start getting a little more vocal about what's going on with our farmland and organic farming and all, pesticides and just the condition of our soil, I think until we really start paying attention with that and voting with our money, right? Then if not, it's just going to stay business as usual. But so keeping in mind, we already are at a disadvantage because our fruits and vegetables are way less nutrient dense than they used to be. And so some things that you can do to counter that is, number one, eating fruits and vegetables in season. And when I say this out loud, it sounds like so common sense, but it was not on my radar. I didn't have the time. I didn't have the energy. I was just happy I wasn't going through a drive-through, right? And eating out of a drive-through. And I do think that's still good, right? I think that's like level one is, just trying not to, eat any junk food. And then you get into cooking in your own house, and then it starts, it just keeps evolving. And so, eating within the cycles of the earth makes sense. Number one, those fruits and vegetables are way more nutrient dense when they are in season. And yes, it's common sense because they weren't stored somewhere or and you went through all the shipping to get to you. So, eating in season, and that's the same thing with trying to eat from local farms, twofold. I mean, obviously support local, right? And those are your neighbors and so important. But there's a lot of research being done on how important it is to try to eat the fruits and vegetables from the land as close to your home as possible, that there's some sort of a synergistic relationship, going on with that. Perfect example is if you have allergies, they encourage you to try to eat honey from as close to your home as possible, because the bees are obviously picking up the pollen from the flowers near you. And then by eating a little honey, after a while, your body realizes it's not an invader, and, the allergies can calm down. So, and honestly, maybe everybody knows this, so I'm sorry if you're like, why is she talking about this? But I didn't know about it. So there's got to be somebody out there that also doesn't know about it. So, again, so maybe it was just me, but when I really started learning about the seasons of the food, another way of getting into that is I don't know if you've ever bought into a CSA. That's where there's normally a local farm, and you give a certain amount of money, and then you get a certain amount of the produce, and either you go to the farm to pick it up or they'll drop it off at distribution centers. That was probably the first moment, because they give you what was just harvested, and that's when you start learning about the seasons, and about vegetables I didn't even know existed. And yes, the first couple of years I was overwhelmed, intimidated, and there was a lot of waste. But I'm glad I went through that, because I think I've learned a lot, and I've incorporated a lot more, into my diet, which matters. Again, listen, we're fighting the good fight here. We have a lot going against us. So if we can find a way to power up through our food again, all the power to us, right? So take your time, don't get overwhelmed. I would say one step at a time, but make it a priority. And again, lifelong learning, right? So I remember learning that. And then I learned about, I don't know if you know this, but it's really cool. And maybe I'll put some of these links in the description, but they talk about eating the rainbow. And it's just a simple way of diversifying what you're eating, right? And it helps your gut biome. It's actually even deeper than that, how certain colors for each of the different fruits and vegetables actually target different organs of your body. So I'm going to find that. I found that fascinating. During the pandemic, when we were all trying to stay positive, and you know what? Focus on lifelong learning. There it is. Pandemic was pretty overwhelming, a lot going on. I had a little too much time on my hands, and I was starting to go down rabbit holes. And instead, I enrolled in an international health coaching program and got certified through the IIN, and great organization, by the way. And again, learned so much about food. I just couldn't get enough of it. So I'll get those links, because it's fun to learn about this, and also it's helping your body. Oh, I'm going to give you one more, and this is probably just going to embarrass myself, but I didn't fully grasp that herbal teas do not have any tea in them. Yeah, they're not green tea, they're not black tea, they're not the white tea leaves, they are herbs. And it's funny, I know a lot of people blow that off, and I know I have a lot of people in my life from the UK, and they get very upset that it's even called tea. And I'm kind of with them, because there's no tea in it. We probably need a different name for it. But that's another rabbit hole I highly recommend you keep an eye on, because a lot of these herbal teas are really good for you, and they're just gentle ways, I guess, to support your body. They normally taste pretty good, and they're not caffeinated, so you don't have to deal with any of that. And there's many different ones that support different organs, and so if you got to drink something, you can be sipping on some herbal tea. So I guess I'm just gonna circle back. Can't you just see Tanya getting ready? She said that when she's making her matcha, and she's got her mantra, and she's prepping her walk with a podcast. Oh my gosh, what a way to start the day, right? I think the further along you get in leadership, the more you have to own your morning, and that is not easy when you have children. So I'm not going to tell you it is. And I do think, though, it's worth the investment and the attempt to do it, because when that morning is yours, so you wake up and you don't scroll, you don't check social media, you just give that morning to moving your body, or calmly making your tea or your coffee or whatever your morning smoothie or drink is, and focusing on yourself for the first. And I know a lot of people do some meditations, I know some people do some prayers, it's such a statement to yourself and to your body and to your nervous system that you're going to pay attention to you first. And you're going to become the strongest you first. And then you're going to give that to the world. So I know if you have young children, that feels like a stretch. I get it. I've been there. But I do think getting up, maybe you don't have an hour or two, but you might be able to squeeze in a half hour or 45 minutes. And I don't know, sometimes I had to go to bed when the kids went to bed and it was early. I was not one of those parents that let the kids stay up late. And part of it was just because I wanted to go to bed so I could get up earlier. But I am actually very happy we did that because I think it taught the kids the value of sleep. They normally did pretty well in school. They weren't groggy or tired. And so I think it was a win-win for all of us. But yeah, see if you can own your morning, whatever that means to you, so that by the time you're walking out the door, you gave yourself something. Even if it's just a little bit, I just think the body pays attention, and I think the nervous system pays attention, and I think it's really, really important. So I think I'm just going to wrap it there. I really appreciate Tanya, and I appreciate just her grounded presence. She lives her life with grace and thoughtfulness, and she uprooted her entire life and made some big moves, and it wasn't easy, and I'm sure there were some bumps in the road, but she did it, and she's thriving, and she's a pleasure to work with. I would love to work with her again someday. I think she's an amazing woman, and she's got a long ways to go, right? So who knows where she's going to take all that? But I think she's a good model for staying curious, for keeping lifelong learning a priority, for not just becoming complacent when you're comfortable. I also like how she has a self-awareness about how she'll get bored, because I think that happens to a lot of people, and I don't think they pick up on that they're bored right away. I think it starts playing out in other ways, but maybe it's just simply that. Maybe your coworkers aren't really as aggravating as you think they are, or your manager, or the tasks that you're doing, maybe they're all fine and you're just bored. Maybe you've outgrown that situation and you're trying to find the strength and the courage and the support system to move on to your next challenge. I don't know. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's why you're listening to this podcast right now. And this is your moment where, I don't know, I guess I'm saying really look at that. And the world needs you to fulfill your calling. You're the only one that has that calling in the specific way that you can do it. And we need you to do it. And I know it is really hard to leave a comfort zone. I also know we live in seasons, not only what we eat, and a good lesson from Gaia around that, but just in our life in general. And there's times that it is wise to stay in the comfort zone because there's something else going on, right? There's something else that needs to take priority. Maybe it's elder care. Maybe your kids are really young. Maybe you're working through a health issue and you need to stay in the comfort zone for a little bit longer, and honor that. Absolutely honor that. Just don't forget Just promise me you won't forget that you are made for great things. And they are things that only you can do. And you'll find them when you start following your breadcrumbs and following your passions and what brings you joy. Because I just believe where your talents intersect with what brings you joy, and which intersects with what the world needs. And then finally, the last circle is that can bring you prosperity, right? To take care of you and your family. That's what the goal is, right? So if you got to stay where it's comfortable, then just make the most of it, right? Just keep learning and keep honing your skills and really power up your body and find new ways and learn more about the food you're eating and what you're drinking and start phasing out. You know, a big thing for IIN and the health coaching that I'm certified in, and I love this, is they don't talk a lot about eliminating things from your diet. They talk about crowding out. Like, feel that, right? It feels so much less pressure. So it's start incorporating healthy foods and things into your lifestyle. Like, you don't have to get rid of anything in the beginning. Just pull in something healthy and let it work its magic, you know, and then pull in another healthy thing and let it work its magic. And invariably, it will eventually crowd out the things that are hurting you and the things that are dimming your light and draining your energy and, you know, maybe giving you the caffeine high and then the sugar crash, whatever it is that is affecting you being a high performance leader. So think about the crowding out. Find something that you can start incorporating in your life and just, you know, bring it in slowly and watch the magic happen. Well, I want to thank you for being here with me today, and thank you for supporting the Powerful Women Off the Record podcast. If you get a chance, shoot over to Spotify and listen to the playlist. It was curated from all these amazing women. I asked each of them to give me 2 songs that either reminded them of who they are or gets them pumped up in the morning. And it's really cool to listen to because you know there is a powerful female leader somewhere in the world probably listening to that day to get themselves going. And I think it's just nice to be linked together like that. Okay, so thanks again for being here, and I'll see you next time.